It's Tuesday night in East Lansing. Come on in, gather around. Third time around, we had two false starts. Thank you for everybody's patience. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher SpartanMag.com, and we're going to talk Michigan State sports for the next hour, hour and a half, something like that. And I've been gone for a couple of Fridays. I was gone for about 8 days, a little bit of a vacation, not too extensive, but able to wind down a little bit. Those 8 days encompassed 2 Fridays, so we were unable to go with Spartan Mag Live last Friday or the Friday before, including the July 4th Friday, whatever day that fell on. So we wanted to get another Spartan Mag Live going because I missed you guys. So it's Tuesday night. We're doing it now. We'll get to some questions. Questions were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board over at SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. The Underground Bunker message board is the finest message board pertaining to Michigan State discussions, mostly athletics, a little bit in terms of Michigan State general happenings, and a little bit off-topic stuff. We try to keep those things reasonable. But SpartanMag.com, if you don't know it, go check it out. If you're not a subscriber, join the fun. We think you'll like it. Give us a thumbs up here on this YouTube broadcast. Also, subscribe to the broadcast here, to this YouTube channel. Also, go check out our Twitter channel, not the Jim Comparoni Twitter feed. What do you call that? Follow me on Twitter, Jim Comparoni. Also follow Spartan Mag. It's at the Spartan Mag. At the Spartan Mag. Justin Thind doing a real good job over there in that area, getting those numbers up. And that's a different way for us to get the word out to Michigan State fans. Because if you're a Michigan State person and you see someone named Jim Comparoni tweet something and you've never heard of SpartanMag.com, you might not be inclined to follow Jim Comparoni, but you might be inclined to follow SpartanMag.com. A lot of Spartan fans out there might be attracted to that. We want to get as many people into the fray as we can. We got a lot of good questions tonight. Always good questions. The last few weeks I've really been since we began this last year, the questions have been great. If I just did this on my own, I might not have enough good things to talk about because I can't think of enough good things. But you people come up with some really good questions, and I dive into some things that I might normally not have brought up, including one tonight about basketball recruiting that I might take a deep dive into to the point where it might test your patience a little bit. If that's the case and you're not watching it live, you can fast forward a little bit. But the deeper I got into that one, the more convoluted it became. Feel free to go ahead and put some questions here in the chat area, here in the live area, and we will get to those questions as well. But we will begin with some questions. We'll go right to the mailbag. These are mailbag style questions. Got to put on the bifocals because that's how old I am. They're not called bifocals. What are they called? My wife's an optometrist. I should know this. I forget what they're called. Same thing, though. Anyway, question number 1 from VC1 in Novi. He says, how do you think the Michigan State football offense will be different this year? First of all, VC1, I like your optimism. How's the offense going to be this year? We're having football this year, right? Damn right we're having football this year. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm just in denial. I don't know. But Michigan State is still working, as are all the other programs across the country, the ones that are still in session, that didn't close down things. Michigan State working as if there's going to be a season. And you know what? I was over there today. I drove through campus today, looked around. First time I did that in a few days. And I was over there around 3 o'clock, and I drove by the football building, saw some players coming out of the Scandalaris Center, saw some players coming out over there at the Perlis Plaza area, and they looked tired. Went by the football building, saw some people out on the practice field. I didn't get out and look in there, but there were some gates that were kind of open. That never would have been the case in the past. I didn't stick my nose in there or anything. That's not my place right now. But it felt like football. I felt like I should be at interviews or at a press conference or something. And the guys looked tired that were coming out. They're working them out hard. Now the initial workouts are over. Now they're getting on the field with the football. I think since Monday they've been able to have team meetings with coaches on the field. I think they can get a football on the field now without pads and do some of the install both offensively and defensively, in addition to conditioning. Tired players, they're not working with the entire team at once. It's my understanding they're different groups because they want to keep the infection separate. So coaches are out there constantly with one group, then they're done, then another group, then they're done, then another group, then they're done. which isn't a whole, Harbaugh used to do that. And I think he still does when they have regular training camps in August. He did the first couple of weeks with part of the team, and then some of it with part of the team, and then maybe some combinations for special teams or something like that. So the coaches would be on the field for 6 hours. I don't know how long these guys are on the field. There's NCAA rules on how limiting how long they can be on over the course of a week, how long they can be on the field. But they're going in shifts, but the coaches are out there. And I've heard some interviews with some other coaches around the country feeling it feels to them like football again to be on the field coaching people. No interviews with Michigan State coaches or players yet. I would anticipate a chance to speak with Mel Tucker. I'll bet sometime soon. You know Mel Tucker. He'd like to get out and talk a little football right now, but Michigan State not opening that up just yet because there's a lot of questions that probably can't get answered. But I don't want to speculate on when that might happen, but it could be time. He's been on the field since Monday. Could be time to do something like that. Let's get back to VC1's question. VC1 from Novi says, how do you think the offense will be different this year? Will it be less predictable as far as trying to establish the run first? Will they use analytics to determine fourth down strategy? Will they take more deep shots? Also had a question from Matt in Grand Rapids, very similar. He said, in the Colorado film you've seen, what are your observations on how Mel Tucker is in in-game coaching? How often does he go for it on fourth down? Defensive timeouts for scheming, trick plays, that type of thing. In terms of defensive timeouts for scheming, I've not watched games closely enough to get a feel for that. A lot of what I've watched have been cut-ups and accelerated, so it's harder to get a feel for the rhythm of the game in those situations. But, both of you guys asked a little bit about fourth down strategy. VC1 from Novi asked if Michigan State might take more deep shots. That's the one I could say for sure you could look for Michigan State to take more deep shots, because in the past they haven't taken very many. There might be some place where a deep route is available in a route combination. Maybe they didn't throw to it, but there will be more route combinations with a deep shot available, sometimes multiple verticals. I'm not saying they're going to be airing it out, air raid style all the time, but more often. I'm not saying they'll go deep as often as Penn State did 3 years ago when Moorhead was became a star offensive coordinator, but more than you've seen. But basically anything that does not get first downs or touchdowns will be criticized because that's the nature of football. You asked, will they be predictable as far as trying to establish the run first? They will try to establish the run. Not sure if it'll be first, but Mel Tucker basically quotes Nick Saban when he says at some point in a game, you need to be able to run the ball. Sometimes in games when everybody in the stadium knows that you want to run the ball. That might be when you're up by 6 in a 4-minute drill trying to melt the clock. Got to be able to run the ball. Might be 3rd and 1 inside the 5-yard line. Got to be able to run the ball. So establishing it, yeah, they want to be physical, and the run game is going to be part of it. Physical tight ends attached to the offensive line is going to be part of it. So do they come out and try to establish it? That seems to be your recollection on what Michigan State's been in recent years. Certainly when Michigan State was at their best in 2013, 14, 15, they put up great offensive numbers in 14 and 15, and the run game was a big part of that. And they did try to establish the run and had a lot of success doing it. And then when it doesn't work, it certainly looks ugly. But we've also seen in the John L. Smith era when Michigan State would pass the ball and pass it, not get first downs, and that looks equally ugly. So will they be less predictable as trying to establish the run first? Maybe less predictable, but Michigan State was predictable in 13, 14, 15 when they had great offenses. It's predictable that when they were going to run the ball. Sometimes you watch Alabama or even Clemson, maybe not Clemson so much. There's a lot of good teams when you know they're going to run the ball and they're still able to do it. Ohio State sometimes, but less predictable. VC1, thanks for posting the question, but I have a feeling that anytime Michigan State has a drive end with a punt, you're going to think something was too predictable. Maybe not, but as far as trick plays, deep shots, yes, predictable. I don't think. I'll say this. There have been a lot of times when Michigan State would script things and it looked familiar from week to week. Maybe that's it. Maybe you're thinking third down, you know that it's going to be a run play based on emotion and personnel. And in those situations, a lot of times that gets back to the Mel Tucker, Nick Saban Mark D'Antonio theory that there are times when you have to run the ball when everybody in the stadium knows you're going to run the ball. Times when you know on 3rd and 1 that they're going to run power to the strong side, and yes, they do it, and they get stopped, and you might say, hey, that was pretty predictable. But there's also times when, hey, they did it, and L.J. Scott scored a touchdown in the final seconds to win the Big Ten championship. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Being exceptionally balanced with a Heisman Trophy quarterback, of course, is preferred. But this is what could be different. I think from week to week, you might see the offense change a little bit in terms of what they think the matchups might be from a positive standpoint. Like if they think they can, throw downfield more against Indiana than they did the week before, I think you might see things change from week to week a little bit more in terms of matchups, which you might think, well, that should be that should be the case in any football team. But the previous staff might have been more determined to do it a certain way. This one's going to be running the ball a lot too. They'll be under the center more than Michigan State was last year. Last year, Michigan State was rarely under center, maybe fewer than 10 times all year. This team, watching Colorado last year, they'll be under center 10 times a game. So as far as trick plays go, as far as formations and style of play, you've probably seen some of Colorado from last year. And I went back and watched a little bit of Minnesota in 2016 when Jay Johnson was offensive coordinator for the Gophers that year, and he was with the Jerry Kill team. And both teams did a lot of pistol, inside zone, outside zone, and people that scout Jay Johnson, they'll see the flea flicker come in there a little bit. And I've mentioned this a few times in the past. One noteworthy game when Colorado played Nebraska, one of the game-changing plays, Colorado hit a 96-yard touchdown pass on a flea flicker. Ran a flea flicker from their own goal line. Touchdown, game changer. It's a common trick play. The timing of that one, kind of D'Antonio-esque. In terms of D'Antonio would do things when you didn't expect it because that gives a better chance to work. Flea flicker from your own goal line. Interesting. Went back and watched Minnesota with Jay Johnson in the 2016 Holiday Bowl when they beat Washington State. The Gophers did. And they ran a flea flicker in the first quarter deep. And my notes don't say how. I think it went for a deep gain, maybe even a touchdown. Otherwise, there's other things. They get under center. When they get under center, you'll see them. They'll run some power in between the tackles. You'll see strong play action outside zone, counter boot like Iowa does. 2 tight ends under center. Outside zone, counter boot the other way, tight end drag, Iowa type of stuff. So, but a lot of it, they're not reinventing the wheel. Don't look for air raid Mike Leach stuff. Don't look for June Jones stuff. It's basic. What's become basic mainstream football today. Pistol. Some hurry up, some slower play, but more deep shots, yes. More trick plays. I don't know how often did Michigan State run trick plays? I'd say probably a little bit more, but Michigan State ran a few under D'Antonio, right? What else we got here? Gator and Novi has a question. Comp, you're the man. Besides Antoine Simmons, who do you think will be the other starting linebackers? All right, the question with Simmons is going to be which linebacker position is he going to play. Antoine Simmons is capable of playing any of the 3 linebacker positions, middle linebacker or the other inside linebacker or in the slot. Last year played a little bit of middle linebacker when Joe Bocci was lost, when Bocci became ineligible. Played in the middle, then they felt they needed his speed more out in the slot area. Would not surprise me if they put him back in the slot, but they love his leadership, so maybe they put him in the middle. Is it one of those situations where you're just trying to get the best 3 linebackers on the field? If so, I'm not. I think that there's some flexibility with Chase Klein and Jess Lord Boateng also, who I would imagine would be the 3rd and 4th best linebackers. So Klein could play weak inside linebacker. Boateng played in the slot a little bit last year. I think he's sturdy enough to play inside possibly also. So your decision on Simmons doesn't necessarily have to be based on who else you want to get on the field. I think they can just put him where they want to put him. Do you put him at middle linebacker so he can be more of a leadership guy? But maybe his speed wouldn't be used as much. Do you move him around? I don't know. My guess, I'm thinking slot linebacker like last year. But, there's been some rumblings also that you might see a little bit more 4-2-5 out of these guys, in which case there's 2 linebackers and a 5th defensive back on the field, maybe a Shaq Brown in the slot. Heard a little bit of scuttlebutt about that. But good question. The coaches are trying to find that out right now. And they're still trying to arrive at it. They're still trying to learn their personnel. Let me see if I can check out some of the questions over here. Appreciate everybody checking out our broadcast tonight and the support we've had over the many months we've been doing this. Really appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot. Let me see who's been in here. All right, Old Tuck, the bell cow is here, and then came your comments about the problems we had earlier, the technical difficulties. Amy Garland says, evening comp, Tyrone Garland checking in from Oak Park, Illinois. Good. Rob South's here. Good. Adam Fekas is here. Good. Rob South. Jason Krulix says welcome back. Good to hear from him. We've got Tom Kelly. One day we're going to see Comp go absolutely nuts on the mic while live. You might see that. That'd be... Get the sledgehammer out. Remember when Izzo went sledgehammer? We never saw a video of that. But when he broke the videos after they lost to Iowa in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, bashed up the videotapes to tell his players he didn't give a crap about what went on in that game. They were not going to watch film of that game. They were getting ready for the NCAA tournament. That was 05. Went to the Final Four that year, right? Yeah, that was 05. Made a surprise run to the Final Four. So maybe I should do that with this thing. Sledgehammer. Be like Gallagher. I had a roommate in Holden Hall once. He was also a good friend of mine from high school. Also a good friend of mine from first grade. He had this this is 1987, and he had this cassette tape deck. Remember that term? Dual tape deck. Fancy stuff, 1987. And it was giving him trouble. And he invested a lot of money in this thing before freshman year. Midway through sophomore year, the thing was failing. He was so angry with it that he'd been proclaiming for days and weeks that at some point when the weather got better, he was going to go out onto the Holden Beach and beat the crap out of his tape machine. Told everybody. And then he followed up on it, probably a nice May sunny afternoon, went out there and beat the daylights out of that thing with a hammer and a few other things. It was beautiful. Something to behold. That guy's still a friend of mine. Didn't talk to him for a while. Lost touch with him, but talked to him recently. He had a place on Wixom Lake. Wixom Lake, the lake that emptied out like a bathtub, flooded Midland. I think I talked about that 3 weeks ago, but good friend of mine. It was great to reconnect with him a couple of weeks ago. All right. Mike Bell says, looks like Mr. Microphone. Yeah. Jason Krulix says, question, there seems to be some talk going around that Tillman is planning on returning to Michigan State. Have you heard anything? There's a little bit about these rumors. I didn't check the Final Forum. Sometimes there's rumors that take place just before I come on the air, and you guys sometimes know more about the very, very latest, more so than I do. Okay, here it is. D. Wells posts, and D. Wells got some insider information. He's a really good contributor to the Final Forum message board at SpartanMag.com. And he posted at 4:30 today. I was out running around doing some things. Didn't check in on the Final Forum message board earlier today. I should have. D. Wells says, hearing he will announce this week that he's coming back. This is middle July. I had heard from some Michigan State coaches. They thought late July was when he would decide. And the determining factor would be whether or not NBA teams and general managers, if any of them would tell him and give him a guarantee that they would draft him in the first round. I thought this might go a little bit longer than just this week. I thought that he might wait longer to gather more information and wait and maybe fish to find out if he's going to get a guarantee. Maybe he's not interested in waiting that much longer. But D. Wells, when he posts something, he's been a really good poster and source of information over the years at the Final Forum message board. I planned to make some calls over there today, didn't get through, But it's interesting that that rumor came out today. I was not aware of that until just now. I've not heard anything on that. Not shocking, a little surprised that it's happening right now. I was told, and I thought it'd be late July. Maybe Tillman's just not feeling it. Or maybe now that some of the guys have gotten back on campus, he feels like he wants to be part of the team longer. I kind of thought that with the virus situation taking a negative turn in recent weeks and thereby college athletics becoming more of a question mark for 2020, 2021, more so than it was a month ago, I thought that might hurt his chances of coming back. But I will default to D. Wells on this one because he's obviously heard from someone. I've not heard from anyone in the last 72 hours about that. So that's interesting information. Good information from him. He's a valuable member of the Church of What's Happening Now over at SpartanMag.com. Let's go back to the mailbag here. And also, a couple other things. When I was driving by campus today, I was over at Breslin. I parked over there and went over to Munn and took a couple pictures of what's going on with the hockey arena. That's starting to take shape. And there were 5 or 6 MSU volleyball players that parked at Breslin and went into Breslin. Interesting that they're working out there. I don't know if they've always lifted weights there. They probably have. But in some ways, when you see like the volleyball team gather around and go in and do things, you see the football team coming out of the building. I mean, it's business as usual in a lot of ways for those two teams. Maybe even unusual to the positive because normally in the month of July, players would not have access to coaches like they do right now, at least in football. That part of it felt like campus again. The only thing missing was students walking around. No students, still a ghost town in that regard. Cars were around, though. People were going places. I don't know who they were, but they were people. Saw a couple police cars. There was something going on at Holden Hall, not with police cars, but trucks, probably probably some renovations or something like that. All right, Sparty. But I guess my point is it was nice to be on campus. It was hot out. Felt like I should be covering either a press conference or a T-shirt camp. I don't know, but I'm as antsy as you are to get the football stuff going again. Now, let me send a tweet out to invite some of the riffraff out there. All right, that one is sent. Also, make sure SpartanMag.com, TheSpartanMag.com, go over there, follow that Twitter, see if we can get over 1,000 on that one. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina says, hey, Jim, any updates on Tillman or Henry? We just talked about Tillman. Henry, last I heard, looking more and more like he's going to be coming back. And I think that one is, I don't want to say it's, I don't think there's, last I heard, I didn't think there was as much concern about that one as we thought earlier. Thought that there might be a Cody White situation going on there. Also, Sparty says, did Izzo prioritize getting Jaden Akins over Kobe Buffkin? Aiken still uncommitted. Buffkin committed to Michigan a few days ago. He says, did Izzo prioritize Aiken over Buffkin, or was this truly a recruiting victory for Juwan Howard over Izzo, as many U of M fans would like to suggest? And Juwan victory over Izzo, as many Michigan fans would like to suggest. I'm not surprised they're suggesting that because even in basketball, it's a paper program. They're all about winning press conferences, winning recruiting battles, and if they lose a recruiting battle, hey, we didn't want them anyway. I mean, so not all Michigan fans are like that, but all the ones I've ever met are. And the one you're talking about, the ones I hear from on talk shows and message boards, pretty consistent. I'm sure there's some that are not that way, but they believe in fairy tales. So recruiting victory in some ways. Now, Buffkin is good, and he may prove to be the best in-state player of the bunch in the future. I think that a lot of these players liked Michigan State. I think that, talking about Brooks and Akins and Christie from Chicago area and Buffkin, they like Michigan State. I think Buffkin may have been less enamored with Michigan State. Old Tuck, $1.99. Thanks for the sponsorship, Old Tuck. Appreciate it. Um, Buffkin, these guys all liked Michigan State. I think Buffkin maybe was not as liking Michigan State as much as some others have shown. So obviously Brooks went ahead, committed, took him. I heard that Michigan State had Brooks in a little bit different category than Akins, Christie, and Buffkin. They got Brooks, and that ended one category. Then the others were more purely, perimeter guys. I mean, Brooks is also, but the other two are more command the ball type of guys. So Buffkin was going to be a little bit harder of a chase, I think was the idea, but they liked him, and he's good. Akins was looking more like Michigan State had a really good chance about a month ago. There was a lot of smoke there, and then it just kind of all dissipated. So now, once Michigan State had Brooks, and then they got Christie. Now, Christie is more like Buffkin than he is like Akins. So if you have Christie, I know they're all in one category, but once you get Christie, you may not need Buffkin as much. So once you get Christie, then Akins it's not totally apples and oranges, but it's maybe tangerines and oranges. And at that point, Michigan State needed a tangerine more than an orange. Does that make sense? So I think Akins, did they prioritize Jaden Akins over Buffkin? I've not heard that 100% factually. But I really strongly believe that once they got Christie, then you saw then the Buffkin domino fell. Is there a chance that Michigan State told Buffkin, we're full now? We got Christie, we got Brooks. Go elsewhere? Maybe not. I don't know about that one. I don't know. Is there a chance that Michigan State didn't go after Buffkin as hard once they got Christie or let off the gas? That's why I tried to make some phone calls today to try to find out more of those things. And what does it matter? It matters for the people in the funny papers, the people you're talking about, the people you're referring to, the Michigan fans. I don't know where you're hearing this from Michigan fans. I don't know if you're going to message boards to read what they're saying or if they're saying this on talk shows or whatever. I don't know because I don't listen to those things. I don't read those things. I mean, I've been hearing that crap for 30 years in various ways, right? So it's funny. Whatever makes them feel better about themselves always makes the world a better place, right? So, but hey, all kidding aside, Buffkin is good, and it was kind of embarrassing, I thought, that Michigan waited so long to offer Buffkin, and they do end up getting him because there's a deep year for talent in the state of Michigan, and Michigan State's already done pretty well with some others. And Michigan State got Max Christie, great recruiting job there, so Buffkin falls to Michigan. So, and he could end up being really good there. So, but now, is a bird in the hand worth two in the bush? I mean, Michigan State's got to go out and get Jaden Akins now. They have to get him. Now, if they don't, they'd end up without Akins, and they didn't get Buffkin. They'll still be pretty good, but it won't be the knockout situation that maybe the complete knockout class will still be a very good one, especially if Bates is in it. We assume that'll be the case. So now that Buffkin's gone, do they really go full blast for Akins? I would imagine so. But I have to get my ear back to the ground on that one. Question number 4, CJ from Locked Down South Philly. He says, at least the liquor stores are open now in South Philly. Good job, CJ. Rooting for you. He says, okay, this is the deep one. Before I get into the deep one, let's go back over here and check out the chat questions. Another one, Jason Krulik. Do you think Kareem Mane commits to Michigan State, goes to another school, or stays in the NBA? I keep hearing that if he goes to college, it's going to be Michigan State. I've not heard anything to shake that one. Now, I was gone for 8 or 9 days, so I don't know if I missed a memo on anything. But the NBA, see, now Tillman wanting to stay in school, finish his degree, do something with his teammates, work on his game, work on that perimeter shot, because he could really make himself more marketable as a professional if that perimeter shot continues to come along. Hit some big ones as a sophomore in that victory over Duke and the run to the Final Four 2 years ago, or 14 months ago, 18 months ago. This year was expected to do more with the perimeter shot, never quite happened. made some good decisions to not go hunt his shot more. But he's got a good release and has the potential to be a good range shooter, which could help him professionally a lot. Remember Adrian Payne developed his three-point shooting later in his career. Draymond Green developed his three-point shooting later in his career. Zach Randolph, after he turned pro, became an excellent perimeter shooter. So Tillman's got that in him. As good as a defensive player as he is, intelligent guy, good defensive player, hard worker. If he adds that component to it, and he can work on that here on campus, not a bad decision. There's no bad decisions there for Tillman. Mane, different situation. So Tillman, if he went pro and even if he stays in college and there is no college season, he's still working on his game and still could work on that three-point shot, take care of his family here rather than bouncing around. There may not be any bouncing around if there's no G League. All that's up in the air, man. Tough decisions for these guys. Tough decisions. So Mane doesn't have as much, he still sees himself, I'm sure, as being a guy that'll be a pro in 18 months. So what he needs to work on, his path might be a different visibility than Tillman. Tillman knows exactly what he needs to work on. Mane might think he knows what to work on, but is he possibly, I don't want to say in danger, but susceptible to making maybe less of an informed decision? Maybe so. So the NBA thing with Mane, I've not heard anything on that lately. Great questions though, man. I've never seen a basketball season or a basketball situation like this where we are in July, almost August, and not sure who's going to be on the roster in October. Not sure if there's going to be a team in October, November, or a season. Could have Tillman, could have Mane. Could not. Maybe they could. Langford's back on campus, doing well. He's excited. How long is that going to carry on? How many scholarships would that add up to be? Crazy different directions that all could go. And that could end up being a second round type of team or a Final Four type of team. If there's a season. Strange. Anyway, Old Tuck says the bell cow sinkers are hanging low in this brutal Texas heat. Take care of those sinkers. Take care. We need the bell cow taking care of his sinkers. Brutal Texas heat, you can have it, my man. Some of you in Texas, when you hear that we got 5 below in January temperatures, I just remind you, hey, man, it's 5 below here in January, but it's a dry 5 below. It's a dry 5 below. Dry. It's a dry 10 below. It's not bad. As long as there's no wind. But I like Austin. Keep Austin weird. I know you live in Austin. I love it. But you can have the weather, man. And I know it's nice in February and January and that stuff, but I like my 4 seasons. All right. Tom Kelly says all indications are that we will not be getting Payne or Budden. If we were 3 years into Tucker's tenure, do we get one or both of them? Yeah, Budden, the linebacker from Belleville, all indications he'll be picking Penn State on Friday. Rashawn actually, I thought you were talking about Benny. So if, Payne's a big timer, man. I like him as a defensive tackle. Best defensive tackle high school junior film that I've ever seen here. He's been hot for the SEC for a long time, and they'll be making it worth his while if need be. So if Tucker were here in year 3, would they have gotten both of them? I think a good chance with Budden. And we got some questions pertaining to that over here in the mailbag. Year 3, but a lot of that depends on what kind of success Mel Tucker will have after 3 years. If he hits 9-3 a couple of times, then yes. Then, I think they would have gotten Budden and had a better shot at Payne. Would have a better shot at Payne also if you're recruiting him for more than 4 months. If you're recruiting him for 18 months, that would help also. Another recruiting question here from Jesse Adams. That's James from Mount Pleasant. He says, I lost my place here. All right. Do you know if and when Andrell Anthony, the wide receiver from East Lansing, is going to make a decision? Because Budden is committing this Friday. They seem like they wanted to play together. I think Penn State's going to be hard to beat for Anthony, too. I'm not hearing anything new about that one in terms of when. Nothing new on that one. But Penn State, I mean, they're recruiting well in the state of Michigan. It's been a problem for Michigan State, been a problem for the Wolverines also, but maybe more so for Michigan State. So I've got a question pertaining to that I'll get back to in a moment. Maybe I'll skip to that question right now. I'll skip my long question and go to, all right here. It's a combination question from Marlowe from Grand Blanc and Macklin JB from Rochester. Marlowe from Grand Blanc says, a little while ago, Michigan State and our staff had some recruiting momentum going and was gaining on some in-state guys. It almost became a joke on here, the Underground Bunker message board, that Harbaugh was too awkward to recruit on camera recruiting this year. Now Michigan has some momentum, and we have been a little bit of a standstill at Michigan State. Any particular reasons you think we've lost or they've gained momentum? And do we desperately need things to open up to be able to recruit, or can we continue to tread water with the likelihood that fall football is in jeopardy, both high school and college? And also, signing day would need to be pushed back. Great questions. Macklin JB from Rochester says, given everything you know about recruiting momentum or lack thereof that Mel Tucker and company inherited from the previous staff, what grade would you be giving them on recruiting for the 2021 class to this point? The grade right now is incomplete because they're still working on it. Got off to a really good start, all kinds of energy, all kinds of momentum. They got some commitments and also caught the attention of people like Jamari Budden and some other players, maybe even Andrell Anthony, that might not have been considering Michigan State as much with the previous staff. Regained some attention from those guys, but if you don't end up going and ringing the bell and getting commitments from them, that doesn't mean anything. It's not horseshoes or hand grenade recruiting, right? But so there was recruiting in the beginning, and there was low-hanging fruit at the beginning. And they knocked some of those off the limbs and got some of those, the low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit being recruits that were interested in Michigan State as a university and an institution and a football program. A couple of them in Detroit. Able to get some of those guys that were willing to commit to a program early. Some of them without having visited campus, some of the out-of-state guys. Not all players are willing to do that. Getting Hampton Fay was big, and they're going to have to keep defending that commitment. So that's some good, that was excellent momentum to begin with, and they did well with Zoom for a while. I heard an interview on Sirius Satellite with Mike Farrell, recruiting writer for Rivals.com. And he said that he had spoken with a college coach who remained nameless. But in my opinion, it could have been Mel Tucker or any number of coaches. He said that coach said, as far as recruiting goes, we are out of ammunition. We've fired all our bullets. We've had Zoom meeting, virtual visit. At some point, there's not anything more that you can sell. You're just a coach on a screen to a lot of these guys, especially Tucker in his 4th month at Michigan State. Some of these other coaches have been involved longer with some of these recruits. That's an advantage for them. I think Tucker, with a lot of that fanfare and early momentum, he could have really made some more strides if there had been spring practice to have recruits on in the spring and in the summer for summer official visits and during camps. I think that would have been perfect for him because a first-year coach can really, can benefit from that initial burst of energy and that initial burst of hope and magnetism because you haven't played yet. The unknown is undefeated. You're 0-0. You got to come here. You can play right away. We're going to do great things here. Where's your dad at? Let me shake his hand. You're here. You see how we're practicing right now? You can be a Spartan right now. You get commitments that way. They're on campus. They see it. They get caught up in it. He was unable to have those pitches in spring practice and during the camp season as a new coach with a 0-0 undefeated record. His first spring practice and his first summer camp will be after his first season, which if they play this year, the record might not be that great. So that initial bump that sometimes you get You can get that ends up being your second recruiting class. You go back and you look at John L. Smith's second class or D'Antonio's second class, Saban's second class. A lot of times they did really well in the second class. I think that was the Cedric Irvin class, wasn't it, for Saban? So this would have been his Tucker's second. Actually, it would be his first class, but that 0-0 after you're hired time is crucial. He, of course, didn't get a first class because D'Antonio was still coach after the 2 signing days, which was a strange way to do it. So, but he didn't get that 0-0 recruiting campaign inertia behind his back. So that is part of the reason why the momentum subsided. And being out of ammunition, there's only so much you can do. And when you're out of ammunition right now, as a 0-0 coach, then the advantage we're seeing is falling back to the established programs. Michigan, Penn State. They've been to bowl games. Penn State won a New Year's Day game last year, beat Memphis or something like that. You know, Franklin's a slick recruiter, does a good job with recruiting. So those established programs that can point to a record and say, hey, man, we are going to be in the playoffs soon and you're going to be a part of it. That's different than Mel Tucker saying we're going to do it down the road. Those other guys, they can point to more success recently. So that's why the momentum has changed. As far as Michigan goes, they've been getting good commitments, doing pretty well. But if you look at average star rating on Rivals.com, Michigan's class right now is number 17 in the country. Pretty good, 17 in the country, but not as good as Michigan usually does. So they've had momentum, but don't be planting any flags for them just yet. Now let's get into this other question. I've already talked too long on some of this stuff, but this was a great question. I got kind of deep into it. It's basketball related. It's from CJ in lockdown, South Philadelphia, and he's excited because the liquor stores are open, and I think he might have taken a few snorts when he of liquor when he asked this question. He says, here's a thinker. He says, with the incredible success of Izzo on the recruiting trail in recent weeks, I saw a recent podcast discussion about what were the biggest recruiting misses of the Izzo era that impacted title runs. What are your thoughts on that? I didn't see that podcast, probably a pretty good one. So I would have liked to have heard it, and I could maybe, no, I'd rather not hear. I'd rather give my own thoughts. So he's saying, I'm not counting Weber or Battier, but here are some candidates. First of all, why are you not counting Battier? Weber was as an assistant to Judd. We got 5 from the Untitled Beer Ranking Show. Welcome back, Comp. Just put the baby to bed, so that's why I'm late. Thank you from the Untitled Beer Ranking Show. I invite everybody to go watch the Untitled Beer Ranking Show. I've not watched it in a while. It's always fun. Your grandpa's great. Great. A lot of wisdom there. A lot of wisdom in that room. I'm not a beer guy anymore, though. Although, because of gluten, But I'm gluten-free now. But Corona, you can drink Corona. Someone told me that, and I tried it last summer, and I was okay. Also, I had a bottle of mead. Mead. How do you spell mead? Is it M-E-A-D? That's what the Vikings drank, someone told me. I had a mead. I was up north over around Crystal Lake. And by the way, mead, M-E-A-D-E. Thank you, Untitled Beer Ranking Show. I had a mead that was kind of, it's made out of fermented honey or something, right? I was over at Crystal Lake, by Beulah and over by Frankfort. And by the way, an attaboy to anyone that can tell me the town of Frankfort, Michigan, and what connection Frankfort had to football recruiting in the mid-1990s for Michigan State. If Nils were here, Amy were here, he would have the answer on that. Maybe. That'd be a good tester for him. But in Beulah, Michigan, there's a beer, like a brewery type of situation, and they brew mead. You brew mead, right? I don't know. Anyway, I had one as a substitute for beer, right? And it was like a lemon honey type of thing. They've got one that's like ginger. I meant to get the name of that place because I had it, and it was excellent, man. It was called, the name of this particular mead was called John Lemon. And it had a guy that was a lemon that looked like John Lennon. with the John Lennon glasses, but it was John Lemon. So that was cute. And it was good. It was refreshing. It was, I don't know if some of you guys, like serious drinkers, could like put back 5 of those. It might get too sweet or something. But I liked it. It was my first ever mead that I know of. So, anyway, Untitled Beer Ranking Show, if you ever do meads, there's one in Beulah, Michigan that was good, I thought. But I've not got the most sophisticated palate when it comes to beer. Anyway, thanks for the sponsorship. Appreciate that. All right, here's the thinker. He says, with the incredible success of Izzo on the recruiting trail. All right, for Battier. Now, Battier, Michigan State, Izzo recruited him hard. It was an important recruit for Izzo at the very beginning. It was the year after Cleves. And Izzo battled for Battier. Didn't have much of a chance, but Battier, real nice guy, gave Michigan State was the upstart program. They hadn't even started up yet. Izzo was a new coach. Nobody knew much about him, but he recruited Battier so hard, from the time he was in the 9th grade. Duke, Michigan State, North Carolina. I don't know who the other 2 finalists were, but I think he visited all 5. And Battier said that the coach that he had the hardest time telling no to was Tom Izzo. The person that he felt the worst saying no to was Izzo. You're never going to beat Duke in that situation, right? But you're asking which recruiting losses had the most impact on title runs. I include Battier in there. Battier won a national title at Duke in 2001. You put Battier on the Cleves team? I know, and you don't want to mess with what the 2000 team was, of course, right? But you have Battier in there instead of A.J. Granger? I don't know. But in 2001, when Michigan State was blown out by Arizona in the Final Four, St. Ambrose, thanks, Mark Smith, St. Ambrose Brewery in Beulah, Michigan, the John Lemon gets my personal thumbs up. I liked it. And I like the little town of Beulah, too. It's all right. More than all right. Right there on Crystal Lake. Anyway, Battier, put him on that 01 team. You get Battier, I think Izzo's got a back-to-back in there somewhere. He might have a 3-peat. If you had Cleves and Battier together, what would that have been like? With Peterson hanging around and Charlie Bell? Holy crap. So I include Battier in it. But they never realistically were. They were in it with Battier, and Battier gave them every shot and every sense of respect. But it wasn't, and it was a heartbreaker. But in retrospect, I can see why you're not including Weber and Battier. But I say you should include Battier, and I would say he was one of the ones. Chris Trainum ringing the bell with a $5 sponsorship. Thanks, Chris. He says I gave Izzo a mulligan on Battier since I missed it. Let's see here. I missed it. I got to find it. Stuck. Screen is stuck. He says, I gave Izzo a mulligan on Battier since he was really starting to ramp up in the late 90s, early 2000s. So Chris is CJ from South Philadelphia, right? That's Chris? Okay, so he's giving us information on his question. But thanks for the sponsorship and the question. So I gave a mulligan on Battier. I agree on the mulligan because Izzo didn't really lose him because he was never in it but never out of it, as Judd used to say. But you put Battier in the hopper in what would have been the 1997 class, Izzo might have had a 3-peat there. So anyway, you're asking about, you listed Anthony Roberson, Jarrett Jack, Jabari Parker, Okafor, Tyus Jones, Josh Jackson, Cliff Alexander, Caleb Swanigan, Devin Booker, Tyler Eulis, Isaiah Stewart, Vernon Carey, Tiger Campbell, Romeo Weems. Well, I'm going to say no on Isaiah Stewart and Vernon Carey, obviously, because there was no season. If there had been if there was an NCAA tournament in March and Michigan State got to the Final Four and was a Vernon Carey short of winning a national championship, then he would be part of this discussion. But because we didn't know what became of the 2020 season, then forget about Isaiah Stewart and Vernon Carey. Romeo Weems and Tiger Campbell. I watched Campbell play a little bit. I didn't think he looked that great. You got Cassius Winston. Campbell's okay, but, wouldn't have made a difference lately. Romeo Weems, I've only seen him a little bit. Not sure he would have made a difference lately. But other ones, interesting ones are, I didn't see Deep End with sponsorship. $2.99. Appreciate it, man. Deep End. Thanks for the support. All the time. Thanks, guys. So, all right. So, Roberson and Jarrett Jack's interesting. Because Michigan State thought they had Roberson for a long time. And that one got a little bit funny, ends up at Florida. So Michigan State started recruiting Jarrett Jack. They were in the same class. And Michigan State was doing a really good job with Jarrett Jack, and he didn't visit because of 9/11. Canceled his visit, ends up at Georgia Tech. He took Georgia Tech to the national championship game as a sophomore. He was part of it. Had a good, really good college career, better than he was. He was a decently ranked player, but had a better college career than his ranking. He's a 6'3" tough guard. Izzo, of course, has always loved tough point guards. Cleves being the best. Travis Walton was in that mold, tough point guard. Jarrett Jack was bigger and stronger. When Michigan State recruited Brandon Jackson a couple years ago out of Mishawaka, Indiana, ended up going to Notre Dame, same type of guy. Izzo loves that type of guy. Jarrett Jack was Izzo's type of guy. And they lost him. He goes to Georgia Tech. National championship game, they lost to UConn, battled them hard. Ironically, Georgia Tech beat Nevada in the Sweet 16, and it was Nevada that beat Michigan State, that ousted Michigan State in the first round in 2004 of that tournament. So Jarrett Jack would have been a sophomore that year. Put Jarrett Jack on that sophomore team, or Roberson. I'd rather have Jarrett Jack. I know Roberson made a nice splash at Florida also. But, when Roberson was a freshman in 2003, Michigan State beat Roberson's team in the second round. Big upset down there in Tampa, right? And that Michigan State team lost to Texas in the Final Four, and that Texas team lost to Syracuse in the Final Four, and Syracuse upset Kansas in the title game. That's when McNamara was drilling threes and Carmelo Anthony was on that team, right? If you put Roberson or Jarrett Jack on that team as a freshman in 2003, could that Michigan State Elite Eight team have gone further and won a national title? Well, the point guard in 2003 was Allen Anderson for the last month of the season. They kind of had to ham and egg the point guard situation because Marcus Taylor had gone pro early, surprisingly, and they didn't get Roberson, so they were stuck in a year without a true point guard. They tried to make Chris Hill the point guard as a freshman for half the season, and then they went to Allen Anderson late in the year and had a real nice run in 2003. But they were, even in 2004 and even into 2005, they were still hamming and egging the point guard position, the crucial quarterback of the Tom Izzo offense, because Taylor left early. They didn't get Roberson, and there was a gap there. And Roberson and Jack were the two guys that could have plugged in. Roberson was highly ranked. He was the guy out of where? Flint or Saginaw? Peeper, they called him. Was an excellent high school recruit, good senior. Paul Davis won Mr. Basketball over him. Roberson was not happy about that. Roberson was a good college player, but not a great one. Not as great as maybe he was projected to be. He was supposed to be better than Jack, but Jack was better in college. You put Jarrett Jack on that Michigan State team. Was he ready as a freshman to make a difference in 2003? Maybe so. In 2004, Michigan State lost to Nevada. Had a lead, blew it. Chris Hill was the point guard for much of the season. Allen Anderson, again, at the end of the year, trying to play point guard. Didn't have a point guard. The problem in 2004 was they didn't have enough bigs. So, Paul Davis played 26 minutes against Nevada, fouled out. Kelvin Torbert played the 4 in 2004. Led the Big Ten in three-point shooting, but he played power forward. Jason Andreas, 24 minutes against Nevada, 8 points. He was number 2 on the team for minutes for a big man, Jason Andreas. Matt Trannon played 6 minutes. Drew Namick, very young, played 2 minutes. They didn't have enough big men. That was one of the things that always hurt Paul Davis. He was always constricted because he was worried about getting in foul trouble, because they could not ever afford for Paul Davis to be in foul trouble because he had no tag team partners. So as good as Jack was and as good as Roberson could have been, I'm not sure either of them would have made a difference in 04. That's a one-and-done team because the thing they lacked that year was bigs. But put Jarrett Jack on the 03 team or Jarrett Jack on the 05 team because he played in 05. Georgia Tech wasn't as good, but you put him on the 05 team. Because remember, 05, Michigan State goes to the Final Four. Drew Neitzel, as a freshman, became a starter. Hill was the starter at point guard for half the year. And a lot of the players thought, let's go with Neitzel. And Izzo's like, yeah, you're right. Let's go with Neitzel. Went to the Final Four. That's the team that upset Duke and Kentucky in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight in Austin, Texas. Lost in the Final Four to North Carolina. The thing is, you put Jarrett Jack on the team. If Allen Anderson's healthy, maybe they can beat North Carolina. I know North Carolina was very, very good, and they beat Illinois. Illinois had a long, unbeaten string that year. So 05 with Illinois, North Carolina, two really, really good teams. Michigan State was, leading or down by 1 at halftime against North Carolina without Allen Anderson. I mean, they had Anderson, but he only played. His knee was messed up. He hurt his knee at the end of the Kentucky game in the Elite Eight. Team MVP, underrated. Billy Packer and everybody had no idea what Michigan State lost when Anderson was playing on a bad knee in that game. So more so than a recruiting loss, health has hindered Michigan State's Izzo's chances of getting another national championship. But if you put Jarrett Jack on the 05 team with a healthy Allen Anderson, put him out there against North Carolina. Now, I know if you have Jarrett Jack all year, then the whole season's different. Your seeding is different. You don't play Duke and Kentucky in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. Everything's different if you have Jarrett Jack all year. But Jarrett Jack, his sophomore year, averaged 12 and 5. As a junior, he averaged 15, 5, and 4.5. Averaged 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. Tough guy. Put that guy in the 05 team. So Jarrett Jack more than Roberson, I'm going to say. So, Okafor and Tyus Jones. The thing with Okafor, you look at for this question, you look at Final Fours, they were close to winning. 2018, when they lost to Texas Tech, that was a winnable national championship, right? They lose. Why'd they lose that game? Because Aaron Henry got in foul trouble. Not Aaron Henry's fault, but he gets in foul trouble, and Michigan State throws off their whole. They did not have enough depth on the perimeter, wing players. And Konadike was saying that all year, and Michigan State managed to avoid it in most close, tense situations of the run to the Final Four, including beating Duke. But it was a slow whistle all year. There's other seasons when there's a quick whistle, experimental whistle. Like, we're going to use this whistle. We're not allowing any contact this year. Whistle, whistle, whistle. 70 free throws per team. 2018 was not like that. It was a slow whistle all year, and it helped Michigan State all year because Michigan State lacked depth all year. But it didn't hurt them as much because they didn't get as much foul trouble because there were slow whistles, except for the Texas Tech game. In that game, quick whistle. In that game, Aaron Henry, 2 fouls first half, foul in the second half, didn't play as many minutes, and the drop-off when Aaron Henry was not in the game was substantial. So what recruit would you have lost that might have made a difference in 18? I didn't look that up. I should have looked that up a little deeper, but my point was I didn't look it up because Michigan State had the roster to get it done, but it was health again. They were one player away from not having health as a problem against Texas Tech in 2018. Could have endured the foul trouble to Aaron Henry. That player was Joshua Langford. The roster was good enough. Don't have to go back to look to see what recruits they missed out on prior to 2018. As good as Michigan State was in 2018, beating Duke, getting to the Final Four. If Aaron Henry doesn't get in foul trouble, if you have more depth there, you're fine. You can win a national championship if you're healthy. The other times they were close to winning a national championship, 2010 when they lost to Butler in the Final Four. Kalen Lucas blew out his Achilles. They had the roster to win a national championship if they stay healthy. So, and even Delvon Rowe played 24 minutes, 4 points against Butler. He was limping around like Fred Sanford when they beat Tennessee. Delvon Rowe was a great high school player. He played through all kinds of injuries, ended up retiring early because of injuries. The roster was good enough to win a national championship in 2010. Lost to Butler. It was a Draymond Green in the post. Contact, no foul. Is that what it was? Butler wins. Very good Butler team. Butler almost won the national championship against a lesser Duke team. But Michigan State had the roster. They didn't have any recruiting losses that could have made a difference in 2010. You probably could go find a recruit that they lost. When I got this question a few minutes before we went on the air, I didn't get a chance to research all of it. If I went back and looked to see what recruit they might have been able to get in 07 or 08, I'm sure there's a player out there that if you plug in could have made a difference. But in my opinion, the roster was good enough. I don't care who you add. A healthy Kalen Lucas, a healthy Delvon Rowe, they can win a national championship in 2010. And I know there's other programs that hey, if we'd have been healthy, we would have won. Cincinnati with Kenyon Martin in 2000. Dean Smith lost a couple of national championships. He was always getting guards hurt back in the late 70s, early 80s. But 2018, give me Langford. 2010, give me Kalen Lucas and a healthy Delvon Rowe. 2005, give me Allen Anderson. More so than recruiting. However, 2015 in the Final Four lost to Duke, and that game was not close in Indianapolis, right? Okafor and Tyus Jones, Michigan State recruited them hard, but it was like a Judd Heathcote thing. They were never in it, but never out of it. They were never out of it, but never in it. I mean, Tyus Jones gave Michigan State a lot of airtime, a lot of respect. Famously, Izzo, after he beat, was it St. Louis at the Palace in the second round of the NCAA tournament, or was it after they beat Valpo in the first round at the Palace? Izzo did his press conference, airport jet, went to Minneapolis, watched high school regionals or something. Tyus Jones flew back to Palace the next day for practice, or that night for video. That's how that's how hard he went after Tyus Jones. But you're not going to beat Duke for Tyus Jones. Okafor beating Krzyzewski in Chicago never happened until last week with Christie. So Okafor and Tyus Jones. Very good freshman for that Duke team. And but I tell you what, that game, yeah, Duke was better than Michigan State. Everybody knows that. But that was a quick whistle game too. A whistle every 52 seconds in that game. No flow. I mean, Izzo wanted to run Okafor in transition and get in some long volleys and run him ragged. Never got in any long volleys because there's whistles. There's whistles. Whistle, whistle, whistle. But recruiting-wise, take Okafor and Tyus Jones, put him in a green and white jersey. That game's different. The whole season's different. So I know that's a big if because, like I said, I don't think Michigan State was ever seriously had a good shot to get either of them. They were a distant silver or a bronze medal for those guys. But you're asking which recruiting losses could have had the biggest impact on Izzo making another title run. That one qualifies more so than Roberson, I'd say. More so than Josh Jackson. Cliff Alexander, I didn't even look that up to see what year that was or what difference he could have made. Who else? Josh Jackson, he was a freshman, one and done in 2017. The 2017 team was not, the Michigan State team was not very good. And Josh Jackson would not have made much of a difference. That was a team with Miles Bridges, and Bridges had to play a lot of 4, had to play some 5. Nick Ward scored 14 a game as a youngster. Aaron Harris averaged 11 points per game. He was out for the year, 2/3 of the way through the season. So Josh Jackson would not have been much of a difference, I don't think. The answer, aside from Shane Battier, the answer, which recruiting loss hurt the most, a recruit that was more attainable, that would have given Izzo a national championship, is Jabari Parker, I think. 2014, he played for Duke. He never won an NCAA game. They lost to, Lehigh that year? But the 2014 Michigan State team, I thought Michigan State was closer to getting Parker than they were getting Jones or Battier. Still it's Krzyzewski, it's Duke, and we're hearing rumors about money that Parker, I don't know, the Zion Williamson, that stuff was going on. It goes on in a lot of places. But the 2014 team, Keith Appling was hurt. They lost to UConn in the Elite Eight. Appling played through an injury. which affected his shooting, which carried over to his defense, Izzo thought, and Appling wasn't himself. But you put Parker on that team. You've got Gary Harris at 16 a game. You got Adrian Payne as a stretch 4 at 16 a game. Appling was still at 11 a game. You had Brandon Dawson, could play the 3 or the 4. So you got Harris, Payne, Appling, Dawson, and Jabari Parker. So you had Appling at the point, Gary Harris at the wing. You can put Dawson at the wing. Payne at the 4-5, Parker at the 4, Parker at the 3, Dawson at the 4. Truly positionless. Positionless talent, but they would still play 5 positions in his own system. I mean, Denzel Valentine started for that team and played 30 minutes per game. Can you imagine you'd be bumping Denzel Valentine to the bench? Because further in that team, if you look at it, Alvin Ellis averaged 8 minutes a game. Russell Byrd averaged 7 minutes a game. You take those 15 minutes and give them to Denzel. Kenny Kaminsky averaged 12 minutes a game. You take those minutes, give them to Parker or whatever. Denzel Valentine becomes your 6th man. The 2014 team, the narrow loss to Connecticut team ended up winning the national title. You get Jabari Parker. That was the recruiting loss, in my opinion. That a heartbreaking recruiting loss that would have given Izzo another national championship. I think that would be the one most likely to do it, other than Battier. So I got too deep into that one, but it was a good question. Had a lot of meat on that question, and I dove into that a little bit too much. I apologize for that, but that's what I do. I go overboard. I get carried away. It's a problem. I'm working on it. All right, let's go back to the chat area. All right, Jesse Adams says, thanks and keep up the good work, Comp, and sipping on a cold Bud Light tonight. Bud Light, Budweiser, the undefeated king of beers, Budweiser, presents professional boxing for your entertainment. No, there's no boxing tonight, but anyway. Bud Light, I like a guy that's not afraid to say that he drinks a light beer and it's not a microbrew. Good for you. Back in the old days, I liked Bud Light also. Mall 286 in the house, 99-yard flea flicker, I believe. Play was insane. I think it was 96 yards, but you've seen it. Ballsy. That Nebraska-Colorado game last year was, I think Colorado went down 14-0, came back. Chris Trainham says, at Tom Kelly Tucker, they're talking amongst themselves here. He says, Tucker and staff should be applauded for selling kids on MSU. However, you can only sell so much when no practices to watch or campus visits. That gets to my point about being out of ammunition. I think there's a lot of programs that are feeling that way recruiting-wise, especially a team that's not been on the field yet. Old Talk Trivia, where did Greg Montgomery begin his collegiate punting career? I don't know that one. I do not know the answer to that. That's something I should know, didn't know. Greg Montgomery, great punter, NFL punter, part of the Rose Bowl team, 1987. Eric Line, Eric FKA, PVB Spartan. No, is that supposed to say AKA? Checking in from Water Island, U.S. Virgin Islands. Saw some pics from practice today on Twitter. Any behind-the-scenes info? None yet. Haven't heard anything yet. Ear to the ground. Nothing yet, though. Old Talk says, do you see the Slade brothers in the mold of Mark Nickel, 1983? No, but, maybe. Maybe. Nickel was excellent. Usually Old Tuck is kind of a wise guy with some of his comparisons to players from the 90s. Are you talking Mark Nickel from the Rose Bowl Mark Nickel, right? Okay, yeah. This time that comparison, I'm not going to sell the Slade brothers short on that one just yet. No, it would be the interior Slade, not Zach Slade. Zach Slade is the edge guy. Tom Kelly at Chris Tranham. I totally agree. Just trying to get Comp's take on where recruiting will be a few years into the Tucker era. We need those type of talents to compete for titles. True. And, yeah, if Tucker, if his third year, after 3 years, if he's had the type of perceived build that Saban had and that D'Antonio had, then yeah, I think he'll recruit real well. I say the perceived build that Saban had, even though, Saban, first 3 years, bowl games, bowl losses, beat Michigan in year one, had some good moments, but just, the tablecloth kept getting yanked out, it seemed like, when Saban was trying to get him built. But still, the program had some juice, had some momentum. He was a dangerous type of coach. Everybody could see that. His bedside manner not so great, in that I felt that the players did not go to war for him. I don't think enough of his players, they feared him, but they didn't love him. So when things started to go wrong in any game, he had trouble rallying them, in my opinion. They rallied in 98 for the upset against Ohio State. That was great. And Mel Tucker talked about that in Tucker Talks a few weeks ago, provided some insight I never heard before on that one 22 years later. But for the most part, when things would start to go sour, it seemed to me like Michigan State's players would quit and they'd get blown out. Happened a lot when Saban was here. As he became an older coach, that happened less, probably because he had better talent and better depth. But I didn't feel like his players liked him and they didn't want to go to war for him. And he had trouble in mid-game, mid-crisis, getting things battened down. So even though Saban was like 500 in those first 3 years, still dangerous and still could recruit okay, although his recruiting, I don't know, it was good, but not great. I think if Tucker can have those type of 3 years, his recruiting will be good. If he has the first 3 years like D'Antonio did, his recruiting could be really good. So, but he needs to have that first. And he just needs to, he's got the personality. He needs to get in front of these guys in regular situations, and I think he could get the bell ringing more. Chris Trainum says, in my opinion, we have been able to land some more of the Michigan guys if there's a normal spring. D-Pen says, good to have you back, Comp. Thank you. Tyler Miller says, what's the word on Mislinski? Mislinski, the center from Jacksonville, Florida. I think Jacksonville. Underrated in the Rivals.com rankings. I think that'll change pretty soon. Was here a few days ago. Also visited Iowa. When he was at the Iowa visit, he walked around and I think did FaceTime with coaches, and they told him what he was seeing. Same thing with Tucker and his people. Corey Robinson does a great job for us. Corey Robinson, great job. SpartanMag.com recruiting anchor, not just recruiting reporter. Corey Robinson's recruiting anchor for SpartanMag.com. He's been in contact with Mislinski, but just a little bit of phone tag since the visit. Hasn't gotten extended word from him yet. He did interviews after the Iowa one, but not yet after the Michigan State one. I don't know what that means. But no word yet on Mislinski. He's not doing any interviews that I've seen yet. Untitled Beer Ranking Show, Mead, Mark Smith with St. Ambrose. That's Mark Henfrey from the board. Thanks for that one. If you're in Beulah, go to St. Ambrose Brewery and get the John Lemon Mead. Or if you're at the supermarket in Frankfort, that's where I bought it. Get the John Lemon Mead. Now, some of you might think that the John Lemon Mead is a little bit soft, but you might be right. I'm not exactly John Wayne as a drinker. You know what I'm saying? Aaron Chandler says, don't know the recruiting connection with Frankfurt. I was too young. Tim Klein was the coach. All right, it's not actually a Frankfurt player. Some of you might remember this one. It's a Saban story. When Michigan State was recruiting a player who was in Michigan on vacation, visiting his granddad, as Saban said. Granddad in Frankfurt. A couple more clues. If I don't get to it, remind me that one, and we'll get back to that one. All right, let's go back to the mailbag. Let's see, we're 76 minutes into this, so got to start going a little faster, plus I'm losing my voice. Excuse me. Don't have a cough button here. Sorry about that. Ronnie M says, your prediction on which coach, not our coach, obviously, he puts in parentheses, which coach wearing a mask on the sideline will still cover his mouth when talking to somebody so that the play won't get hijacked. That's an interesting concept. First of all, I like your optimism. You're expecting football with coaches wearing masks. Hopefully, I just bumped the mic. Hope it doesn't fuzz out. So I like your optimism that you think there's going to be football, coaches wearing masks, and who's going to be the one that covers his face? Not needing to cover his face because it's already covered, right? The answer is the booger picker eater guy. That's who's going to do it. Also, Ronnie says, are you a fly fisherman? He says, bought my 7-year-old granddaughter a fly rod for her birthday. My son sent some pictures of them fly fishing in La Crosse, Wisconsin. My wife asked if fly fishermen ever catch anything. Never done it, so don't know how to answer that. Yes, fly rods do catch plenty. For a 7-year-old girl, that could be difficult. There's a throwing motion, a 10, 10-2, they got to stop and all this stuff. But young people, especially young girls, can get into fly tying. I know Conandyke's daughter was really into fly tying at that age a few years ago because, and I've not done that yet. My daughter would like it too, but I never quite get to the fly tying part of it. But fly tying, yes. Get a little older. I think it's recommended for kids to start out with, spin casting, then fly fishing later. But I'm sure out west they do it right off the bat. La Crosse, Wisconsin, I'm guessing that's the driftless area of Wisconsin. That's driftless fly fishing. But yeah, if you fly fish, you can get frustrated if you don't have the right fly, matching the hatch and all that stuff. You've seen river runs do it. I don't want to bore you on that stuff. But now this is going to be sacrilege to the real fly fishermen out there. When I go fishing, it's just down the block here. Usually, I did last night. Just walk down there. It's accessible. It's largemouth bass for me because there's no trout here. There's no trout stream within 30 minutes of Lansing, East Lansing. So it's bass. So it's not going to be dry flies on the top. It's not going to be a grasshopper or terrestrial. It's not going to be, mayflies because it's a lake. It's a pond. It's not, there's no, we do have a few mayflies that hatch out of there, but not a lot. And they don't come to the surface like trout. So nothing dry flies, nothing on the surface. So I get into the water with streamers. So if it's bass and you're looking for traditional dry fly fishing, probably not going to work in my experience. Go to the streamers, go to the woolly buggers. You want a streamer, something like that's a streamer, gets in the water, gets wet, and starts looking like a leech or something going across there. These other ones, these are the dry flies or got the Royal Coachman. I got a pretty nice brook trout up in the UP with a Royal Coachman back in the old days. Anyway, streamers for the bass, not the traditional, floating on the surface with the excitement of a trout coming to the surface to get it. If you sit there all day on a bass pond waiting for a bass to come get one, they'll never get one. For a bass, if they're in Wisconsin, maybe they are driftless going for trout. I don't know. But the answer is yes, you can catch stuff on a fly rod. And the fly rod, there's something more engaging about it to me. Although last night, I was messing around spin casting because my son was getting into it a little bit, and I was testing something out, and I was having a little more success with that. And then I had a problem, had a technical problem. The thing broke, and I had to go get a different one today, a different reel. But that was just a rubber worm. So I like both. Some people don't do either. I do either. I'll go fly rod or spin casting. I haven't done much bait casting. Trolling in a boat, I don't know, not my thing. But yes, you can catch fish on a fly rod. So you can tell your wife, yes, you can. And if bass is what you're accessible to, gotta go with a streamer. Greenid on the Underground Bunker message board says, once you figure out how to fish with a fly rod, it's hard to put it down. Have fun and tight lines. I agree with that. There's just something a little different about it. And I like, when you get the line out, and you're here, and like a fish rises over here, a fish is over there, you can go boom, boom, and be right on that fish right now. Whereas if you're a spin cast, you got to reel it in, and then, with a fly rod, you can go, you're 30 feet over here, you can go, bam, 60 feet over here. You can cover 60 feet right now. Bam. I like that part of it. I don't know. It's different. Actually, in a river, that's real fly fishing, and I'm not. I've done some of that, but I'm not by any means an expert. I'm not by any means any good at it. All right, Dan from Royal Oak says, what do you think of Michigan State's recent offer to Stephen Johnson? That's Charles Brantley's teammate. Can you provide us with your evaluation of Johnson as a prospect? Do you think Michigan State is reaching with this offer? Love the content. Please keep it coming. That's Dan from Royal Oak. Talked a little bit about him on the message board last night. Stephen Johnson from Venice, California. Charles Brantley's committed to Michigan State. I watched his huddle video. And again, I'd like to see a complete game, more so than highlights. All of his highlights are the quarterback position. Michigan State recruiting him as a corner. He looks small. I think he's listed at 5'11". Man, I don't know. Might be 5'10". He's small, but he's got acceleration and then another gear. You see it a couple times on punt returns. You see it a couple times on some long runs. A little physicality. Sometimes as the ball carrier putting his head down and knocking a guy back once. That was good to see. I don't think there was any defensive film in his highlight package, but Michigan State offering him as a corner. I don't know if they've seen him in 7-on-7s or something in previous years. You know, Harlan Barnett's got that part of the state, that part of the country pretty well scouted, especially for defensive backs. So if they like him, I would never say that it's a reach. But you can't get a look at his hips in terms of hip turn because he's not playing DB. I assume it could probably translate pretty well. But he does have a real good burst and then that extra gear at the end. So he can go. I would defer to Harlan Barnett on that one. I would like to see more, though. Type of guy I would have loved to have seen at a camp this summer to cover some people, right? I mean, Michigan State back in the D'Antonio era and in the Barnett era, when Barnett was here, they recruited Tony Lippett, NFL corner, was wide receiver of the year at Michigan State in the Big Ten wide receiver of the year. High school quarterback, never played wide receiver. Played wide receiver here at camp for one day. They offered him. There's been some others like that. Javez Alexander hasn't quite broken through. Who are some of the other ones? Keyshawn Martin, high school quarterback, wide receiver. I mean, Keyshawn Martin could have been a corner, but he's a pro wide receiver, so they got that one right. So it's kind of a D'Antonio type of thing, looking at a guy that's a high school quarterback and recruiting him as a skill guy away from the ball. But burst and then another gear for sure. And that's not common. So there's some value there. 2-star, I could see that. Again, not a big guy. Another reason you'd want to get him on campus to see exactly how tall or untall he is, because he's not. He's small. He's playing quarterback, and that ball looks huge when he's got it. All right, Griff from Hill Valley. I don't know what Hill Valley is. Sounds nice, though. He says, can you talk through what a hypothetical spring football season could look like? I'm concerned about it impacting the 2021 season with players quickly having to turn around and prepare for a new season if a spring season takes place. That's a good comment. I've heard some people say that. I saw Paul Konendyke's post about that on the Underground Bunker message board. Konendyke doing a great job for us also. Thanks, Paul. Paul saying that if there's a spike this winter, it'll be hard for them to get in condition in February and March if they're not able to lift weights together and condition to get ready for a season in February, March, April, or March, April, May. So that part would be difficult. But if they're able to play football in the spring, and they miss out, they could miss out on a lot of indoor training, weightlifting. But if they decide they want to have spring football, they aren't going to care about that. They'll put some sort of product on the field and get their money. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I just think that if they're able to play football, someone's not going to be in the room and say, wait a minute, these guys aren't going to have enough time to lift weights. They'll figure that. That won't be a reason why they won't. That could be an obstacle. And if if it's an obstacle, if the virus is still strong and there's a spike in January and February, that could be an obstacle that they don't get to play in the spring either. So, these things are changing every week, as you guys know. Ivy League shutting down football, Stanford cutting 11 sports, Big Ten, as you know, conference games only. SEC athletic directors met yesterday. They're tabling their decision on this. Some people are criticizing the SEC. I don't think you should criticize the SEC, and I'm the first one to criticize the SEC. But if they want to wait until more information comes in, I think that's fine. It's not hurting anybody. It's not hurting anything. For them to decide later whether they want to just do conference games. Now, it's a little different in the SEC because you've got 5 programs in the SEC that have key annual rivalries outside of the conference. I mean, Florida plays Florida State every year. Georgia, Georgia Tech. Kentucky, Louisville to a lesser extent. There's a couple other ones. What else is there? There's write it down. I forget the other ones. But they'll want to try to hang on to those as much as they can. Although, I mean, USC and Notre Dame's not going to play each other this year, right? So, SEC, I've got no problem with them waiting. I've got no criticism for that. I think that's smart. But in terms of the spring and what things are going to look like in January, I've got one prediction on this. Things are really tight right now. I mean, are you going to be able to send your kids back to school? That's become a political football. Masks were a political football for a while. Everything's a political football. Football's a political football. My prediction, after the election, in November, after the election, things won't be as tight. It won't be as tight. Things will be covered differently. Administrators will look at things differently. Media will look at things differently. And I'm not predicting who's going to win or lose the election. I just think that so much of the coverage right now is trying to influence your vote. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just criticizing the media. So that could all trickle down to football looking different in the spring because we don't have these other political footballs going on. I might be wrong. All right. Because I don't know, it's I don't know. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, one or two more questions here in the mailbag. MSU Polo says, good to have you back. Hope your time was restful. Thank you. My question this week is on potential football team attrition. Normally we would see guys leave after spring football and sometimes into the summer. More recently, we've seen guys enter the transfer portal during the first few weeks of the season before the 4-game redshirt window may close for guys who are getting game time. Now, who knows? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on when we might see more guys to decide to move on. Whether or not we have a season will certainly factor in, but I thought you might have a read or you might have heard some things on the ground. No, I've not heard anything about potential attrition, and I do think that the current staff is anticipating and maybe even needing some attrition if they want to have a 25-man class. And Mel Tucker did say recently that he anticipates a 25-man class, and you cannot have a 25-man class unless some people move on. They don't know who's going to move on until they get on the field with them. Some of their own players won't know that there's someone who needs to move on until they've been on the field and realize that they're still fourth string and it's time to leave. Those guys haven't gotten that signal yet because they've not been on the field enough to get evaluated. So all of that's on hold in terms of attrition. And the interesting thing is, Michigan State right now, they're still training. They had 0 positive COVID tests this week out of 74 or something like that. They've only had 2 or 3. they've done a great job. Great job. I mean, model job Michigan State has of bringing people in, testing right away, and then quarantine. Wait another week, come back, test again. Now you can get out and work out. And those players, there's no students on campus, or very few of them. There's no bars open. There's nothing going on. So they're probably not mixing with other students at all. So they've been clean. They've been continuing to work out. You know, Ohio State shut down for a week. Today, just a few hours ago, they announced they're back in action, but they didn't say how many people tested positive in the latest rounds for Ohio State. They didn't say the first time when they shut it down. They just said, we're shutting down. They didn't say, hey, we got 20 positives, we're shutting down. They just said, we're shutting down. No further information. A week later, we're opening back up. We tested again, opening back up. For all we know, they had 15 more guys test positive on Monday, but they're opening up anyway. We don't know, or there might be 0. But this is what I posted on the bunker. Maybe they're looking at Clemson. Clemson's had, 20 people, 25 people test positive, and they have them sit out for 10 days. At Michigan State, it's 14 days. At Clemson, it's 10 days. And then they're back on the field. So Clemson is getting people going through the virus. It's not like the chicken pox, though. There was an indication today that there's a couple of people they've found that tested positive, had it in March, and are testing positive again today, which sounds scary. But it's a coronavirus that can change, like the flu. You can get the flu 1 year, you get it again 4 years later. It's a different flu. It changes. The common cold. The common cold is a coronavirus. And there's no vaccine for that thing. It's a different cold every year. So, you know, I'm not an expert on those things. That's just what my sister told me. She's a medical technologist. But, you know, you hear a lot of people say the good news is the death rate is down, all those things. Is it becoming less of a problem the more that it's out there? I don't know. Viruses get sometimes less severe later. If that's the truth and young people remain not as susceptible to serious complications on it, by the time we get to the spring, maybe people look at it differently. Maybe because there's no election. Because, I mean, the election thing, both sides are saying everything's great, or they're saying everything's screwed up. They're both saying this way. You know how it is. I'm not saying either side. I'm just observing political parties and coverage of them. That's it. But let me say this. So Michigan State's doing a great job. They're having no positive tests. What happens if next week the Big Ten announces all teams, no football this season? Some people think that their decision last week is a precursor to that. What do you do if you're Michigan State? You're sitting there like, man, we got everybody on campus and we got nothing but negative tests here. I would hope that the NCAA or the Big Ten would allow a team like that to continue training. Or would the NCAA say, everybody go home? If everybody shuts down football, do they say, everybody go home? No football operations, everybody go home. If that happens, you'd have a lot of players going home, and they'd be much more likely, possibly, to mix around and contract the virus at home and not get as good of oversight and treatment as they would here on campus. That's a point Rick Neuheisel made. So if they shut down football, but Michigan State is still reasonably clean, then how many students come back to campus? Now you got football players, and there's no season, and now you're telling them to stay quarantined, but they're still going to mix with students. They're students, right? So you'll get some positives. You'll get some people that contract the virus, and they'll be quarantined. My thing is, I would hope that if they shut down the season, that they're still able to train. Now, there's some places that are not going to have their students back at all. Is it out west? Maybe Stanford or California, some of those are not. They don't want their students back at all. Maybe Michigan State could come to that. I'm not sure. But if students are back in some regard, and football is canceled, and the players, I would hope the players would still be allowed to train. If that happens, and we've got no football season, and we've got students on campus and players allowed to train, I wouldn't be shocked if you have a green-white game in October. Things change. Things are like changing all the time, right? I don't know. I wouldn't rule that out. So that's it for the mailbag. Let's go back to the chat area here. Aaron Chandler. Okay, all right. He was talking about the Frankfurt thing. I'm going to write that down. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget the Frankfurt thing. I'm going to make a note to self. Frankfurt. All right. So, Chris Trainham says Alexander, Booker, Ulis, Okafor, Jones were all the same class. So Ulis, Ulis was a guy, Tyler Ulis, talking about recruiting again, a guy that, he was Travis Walton's cousin, Lima, Ohio, I think. And Tyler Ulis was a wee little guy, 5'2", 5'3", and he grew a little bit to like 5'6", and you saw what he became, an excellent player, just a killer. And by the time he was good enough, it was too late. Michigan State couldn't get him. They'd been chasing Tyus Jones. They had prioritized Tyus Jones. And Ulis was good. Then Jones was getting out of reach, and all of a sudden Ulis became great enough to go to Kentucky, and he was a bad dude, right? So if you put Ulis on the Michigan State team that lost to Duke in the Final Four, I don't know. But Booker, going to Kentucky, Booker was a funny one. Would he have made a difference that year against Duke in the Final Four? Not as much as Okafor and Jones, because if you take Okafor and Jones, then you're taking them away from Duke, the team that beat you. And Alexander was that year also. Okay, if you have Alexander on that team, he might have helped you against Duke a little bit. But I'd be more interested in hurting Duke than helping myself. But if you can do both, that could swing the whole thing. Yeah, they were all the same class. Cliff Alexander, Booker, Ulis, Okafor, Jones. That was a great recruiting year, wasn't it? Michigan State didn't get those guys. That was a year when Izzo was, thought that if he couldn't recruit guys like that then, coming off the 2010, 2011 run, 2009, 2010. Well, those guys were freshmen in 15, though, right? He was like, if I can't get them right now, when will I ever get them? So he made a run at some of those guys: Parker, Booker, Alexander. Now Booker was an in-state guy, but that one was just kind of it's one of those Kentucky deals. Michigan State wasn't their kind of party. All right, MSU number one fan says, who's kicking punting for us this year? Man, I don't know. I had to get my depth chart out. You still have Coughlin. Punting, Tyler, what's his name, the walk-on that punted 2 years ago and got injured. You got him. You got the Australian guy coming in. Crawford's his name. Crawford's numbers are okay coming in from UTEP. But I think Tyler, what's his name? Tyler Scott? Tyler Perry? Something like that? I should know that, but the walk-on, Tyler, what's his name? I think it's a punter. As was Trevon Blewett, I believe. Trevon Blewett was on that recruiting year. Yeah, there was a lot of them Michigan State was in on. All right. Carter 917 says, what is the highest ranked MSU player? The highest ranked player MSU should land this year in football. Ugh. I thought Budden was going to be it. I don't know. Great question. I don't have a good answer for that. Tyler Miller says Tyler Hunt. Thank you. What did I say? Tyler Perry? Who's Tyler Perry? An actor or something? MSU fan number one says, who's kicking punter for us? We will beat Michigan. And we will beat Michigan. Question mark. Will we beat Michigan? Probably not, my friend. Probably not. I don't even know who the quarterback is. Michigan doesn't know either, but they're a little further along. Looks like we're out of questions here. We still have a few people left. Let me see. I got a few people watching live. The Frankfurt question. All right, Frankfurt, Michigan, located right over here on Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan gaining ground in the Great Lakes. Power rankings, might have an update on that next week. I enjoyed Lake Michigan last week. I was in Lake Huron also, testing both waters. Literally testing the waters, east and west. All right. Frankfort, Michigan, 1995, 1996. Saban said that there was a recruit showed up with his granddad in a pickup truck, came to the camp, kicking camp, never even heard of him, showed up in his granddad's pickup truck from Frankfort, kicking it, punting it. Kid was from Florida. They looked around. Saban had, I think, Greg Montgomery take a look at him and looked great. Offered him, got him. 5 years later, that guy, game-winning field goal to beat Florida Gators in the 1999 Citrus Bowl. Paul Ettinger is his name. That's the recruiting connection to Frankfort, Michigan. His grandfather lived in Frankfort. He was up during the summer visiting his granddad in Frankfort. Heard about the Michigan State special teams camp, tryout and everything. Showed up in his granddad's pickup truck, left with a scholarship. So that's Michigan State's recruiting connection to the town of Frankfort, Michigan. MSU number one fast Sparty is beating Michigan. Well, I like your optimism. I've been wrong before. Bill Taylor says, sorry I'm late, but any word on all the Tillman staying buzz going around? We did talk about that. I've not heard anything. And D. Wells had it on the message board. You probably saw it there. D. Wells, very much so plugged in. He's had great information over the years, and he wouldn't throw that out there unless he heard something. Doesn't shock me that it's gone that way with Tillman a little bit sooner than I thought. I didn't know how the latest spike in the virus and now more questions about what school's going to look like in the fall, what the athletic season's going to look like in the fall. Those questions are more dim and grim now than they were 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I was hearing 50-50 on Tillman, and that he was going to wait and see what the NBA people, he was going to wait for a guarantee from the NBA people and then make his decision. Maybe in the meantime, he's decided that he doesn't need a guarantee. He wants to stay. Maybe something in his heart makes him want to stay, and maybe D. Wells had his head to the ground on that one. Old Tuck says, should be number one on your list, Seaway Conference area. Talking about Lake Michigan, the Seaway Conference, Greenville, Muskegon, Orchard View, Mona Shores, a few others, Seaway Conference. I got you. The word on Miss Linsky, haven't heard anything yet. He was here a couple days ago. He's not answering questions yet. Not sure if that's good or bad. That's usually not great, though, but I haven't heard anything yet. Michigan State really wants him, though. But that's going to wrap it up. That's it for SpartanMag Live for this week. Appreciate everybody chiming in. Appreciate the sponsors, Depend, Old Tuck, Untitled Beer Ranking Show. If I forgot anyone else, I apologize. Chris Trainum with sponsorship. Old Tuck with a sponsorship, $1.99 style. Appreciate that. And all the people checking in for all the fun. Go over to SpartanMag.com message board, and we'll be talking Michigan State sports the rest of the way. I got some football stuff I want to write, off-season type of stuff, because people want to read some football. Got to get some stuff moving on the front. It's good to be back. Good to be part of the SpartanMag Live once again. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon, maybe by the end of the week. It won't be Friday, I don't think. Supposed to coach baseball. I got to wait and see what our tournament pairings are. But anyway, we'll see you next time, and thanks for tuning in to SpartanMag Live.